we'd like to have your comments, and we'd like to have a discussion here. Thanks for your attention.
That was perfect. I think, as I probably said last time, it lays a good foundation so we can build upon that. As you were just concluding, I've shared the link, so hopefully we'll be joined by a couple of guests, a couple of different views, I hope. So, unfortunately, it'll probably be a lot of people agreeing with us, so hopefully it'll be someone who disagrees with us as well. So, I guess the first question I have from that is, we throw around the term secular morality quite openly. When you say secular morality, do you mean moral relativism, moral realism, moral idealism? What sort of, is it might makes right? Is it whatever the society decides is right is right? Do you want to expand on what you mean by secular morality?
I mean the non-religious morality. I mean a society where one of the fundamental principles is competition between ideas. And if you're describing or asking about particular approaches to philosophy or to building a society, it's kind of collective movement, and it's basically a broad circular morality, as I mentioned here. It's something that is a collection of all the approaches which at the end give us the best that can be now. And the most important thing here for me is the ability to throw away what is obviously bad, and not to try to protect it because it's written somewhere in a book that we consider protected and we consider to be the best problem with religious morality is that this book is untouchable. We cannot say, okay, these pages are crap, or these pages are do not correspond to what we believe now. This is why we just remove them from the Bible 155th edition. But I think the way it should be revised every couple of years or even more often, and that's exactly what happens to the to laws, to the whole systems of laws. So I guess, and you know, if you take any book on self-improvement by guys like Stephen R. Covey or other guys, I would argue that any one of those books that are based on the best ideas from philosophers, from laws, and from different parts of the world, any one of those books is better and more appropriate as the base of morality than any ancient religious book. I understand that for many people it sounds crazy, it sounds very hurtful, just because of those scripts that were given to them by parents when they were very young. But I encourage people to think about it, to try to challenge themselves or try to ease their pain in this, and to think why it can be true. I hope that answered your question.
I think so. I guess the next question.
You as a philosopher can give us more background in what is meant by every type of morality that you mentioned, and maybe we can discuss more of this if you want.
I think I've shared the link, so if anyone wants to come in and do that, we can do that. So I'll go for a bit more. I was going to say a simple question. I don't think there's a simple question when it comes to morality, but a simpler question, I guess, is so where exactly would you say morality comes from? If we go with the secular morality, there must have been a time in which it was profitable to be moral or quote unquote good. So what do you think the foundation of where morality came from if it didn't come from God?
Okay, let me come back to one of my slides, uh, if you don't mind, because some of them answer exactly that question. And so it comes from several sources at once. When we the more we have brains and the more we have capacity for thinking, the more it comes from tradition, from the uh, accumulated knowledge, from our experience, and it comes primarily from parents. And the origin of morality was at times when we were much simpler animals, and when it was important to survive as a species. And then math and game theory came into play with our ancestors not knowing that. Tribes and species that didn't conform to those laws simply didn't survive. Only those tribes, only those species which behaved in mutually beneficial, in a systematically stable way, survived. And by trial and error, animals and later humans found out that it's better to reciprocate with good. It's better to support those in need, and it's explained by kin altruism, by reciprocal altruism, by the studies of genes. The more we support our kin, the more likely we are to pass on our own genes, and the more we reciprocate, the more we are likely to stay alive. So and then when our thinking capacity became enough for us to understand more and more, we started to try to explain things, and we were afraid of many things, like lightning, like other stuff, and the religion was a product of our thoughts, of our morality, of our societies, of our tribes, of our species, not the foundation. Then it became quite a self-enforcing loop. We started with religious traditions. Religions came and went away, and so definitely it's not a religion. Religion is part of the morality which was developed and created by people, and it was originally created by people as more simple animals when we were not we cannot even say we were people at that time, and we can see examples of that behaviors of, we can call it morality too, because when a bat comes back and hears some other bats calling, it shares food, it shares blood with other bats, and the scientists checked that it's not even kin altruism, it's a reciprocal altruism. Reciprocal means that a bat or an animal counts on the other animal to come back with the same good next time when you are in need. And there are interesting studies when they can remember who is good and who is bad, and they don't give them food next time if they don't reciprocate. So those bad guys who are not moral just tend to die sometimes when you don't have food. So it's selection. It's society or tribal selection. And the societies, as I said, base the morality on math, and free competition is extremely important for us of the ideas.
I've been listening for a while. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
And I've really been enjoying it. The evolutionary aspect of morality and how we develop it socially was really interesting. Um, I think that science, in the end, is really the only way we do determine morality by evaluating a given premise. Like, I think Sam Harris used the acid in the face. Is it better to have acid thrown in women's face or not? Let's weigh and measure the suffering versus the happiness, right? And so through that premise, I think science has a whole lot to say about morality now, and that we can use it to, take morality a lot further, make it a lot better.
I still have problem trying to explain to religious people where uh, the natural morals come from, because even science doesn't really know it yet. They're still investigating it, and so I can't present 100% evidence. You got some examples of experiments with apes trying to steal nuts while another ape is not looking, and stuff like that, which has some implication into moral behavior. But that's not a complete theory. Those are just small experiments. So I still have trouble trying to formulate or talk where my morals come from as a Darwinian person.
Okay, that's a fair point, and there are different species, there are different models of behaviors that happen to be stable. Some of the species demonstrate more violent behavior. Other species demonstrate more peaceful behavior. We can take, for example, uh, chimpanzees and bonobos. They both are very, very close genetically to us, and they separated uh, quite recently in geological time. And chimpanzees are aggressive. They are hierarchical. The males try to force things. They try to beat females and other males, while bonobos are so-called his of the ape
They
world.
they
They
prefer sex.
yeah, they prefer sex. They prefer dealing in a loving way with each other. Earlier, I mentioned, for example, bats, and there are other species who reciprocate, who care for other members of the group, uh, giving them food. I think that's the best demonstration that reciprocation and paying back with good deeds is not only possible but is probable in the animal kingdom. And uh, also looking at different societies in human populations, we see different examples with the different levels of morality or violence. A very interesting book about it was, for me, surprisingly, Charles Darwin's book on the origin, on the descent of man. He describes very many tribes in Australia, for example, in other parts of the world. He describes here peculiar traditions, and he describes how different tribes behave in different ways. And it's very, very widening your worldview, and it's very interesting what kind of weird, strange, and often very, very sadistic religious ideas they come up with, which definitely look to us very, very strange and
Such as
sometimes scary. Such as, for example, he describes uh, an example when a guy lost native Australian, as far as I remember, he lost his wife. She got ill and died, and they have a tradition that he has to thank her soul or something like that by going to another tribe and killing a female in another tribe. In that way, he has to. In that way, he like consoles his own dead wife's soul, and the guy who was governing, the guy who came from Europe, he was governing that territory, and the local explained this to him, and he said, no, you cannot do it. It's against the law. It's against the morality. You're not allowed to do it. If you do it, you will be punished or you will be convicted. And he started, it was so serious for him that he started to get ill. He started to get sick. He was thinking all the time that his wife was suffering because he hasn't killed a woman in another tribe. It was so serious for him that he was on the verge of physical death. And then he disappeared, and he was reported to be happy again in some other place, and he was reported to have done what he was going to do. This is an example of how strong this early childhood indoctrination is. When we are given scripts, when we are given some ideas by parents when we are very, very young, how strong they can influence our worldview and our logic, our behavior, and our moral code. And that was his religion.
Yeah, I can agree with it. It's very strange to hear things like that, art, culture, behaviors from other from a tribes, basically Aboriginal tribes. Yeah.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I was going to tag on something that was pretty much just with the title of it, why the religious morality fails, and I'm just going to be extremely simple here. But my thought on that is because the Bible is moral and immoral at the same time. I mean, you have 7 passages about saying don't kill people, and then you have 7 saying, well, this is why you can kill people, or, you know, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. I mean, stuff like that. It's like, I guess if you really want to cherry pick out of it, but that's, I mean, in my opinion, that's why the religious, or at least Christian religious morality fails, just because it's not clear cut. I mean, it's got bad and good, and you can do, it's contradictory. You can do both things, and it's considered moral according to the Bible. And I mean, for example, this is where I'm coming from on this. I'm on Skeptic's Annotated Bible, if anybody wants to see what I'm looking at right now. And I just did a search on their site for morality, and this one's to kill or not to kill. And they have about 6 verses here that saying, yeah, go ahead, kill this person for this reason. But then they have like 5 on the other side that are like, oh, don't kill them because of this. And same with adultery and a bunch of other stuff. You know, well, you can do it under this circumstance. Normally it has to do with, oh, well, the woman did something wrong. I mean, who knows? But basically, I just found it ironic that it's both immoral and sort of moral at the same time. Does that make sense? Go ahead.
I kind of disagree with you. I don't think the Bible is moral at all, even when it is espousing something that we would agree is moral. And it's basically it's the premise that it's not, they're not evaluated morals. They're just declarations, right?
Yeah, that people are picking and
that
choosing
this is
from.
moral. And I don't think that that's at all a useful way to determine morality. And so,
No, yeah,
in that
and
sense,
I
I would say that the Bible, none of the holy books are moral in any sense.